Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Xavier Smith, and today I will teach you how to find the vertical asymptotes and halfway points of a graph of tangent. So let's start with the standard form and its transformations. Our standard form is y equals a tangent b of x minus h plus k, where a is our amplitude, which is the halfway point's height from the midline. Then B determines our period. Well, what does that mean? Well, the period of a base tangent graph, if we remember, is pi. So our period is pi over B. If B is 2, then we compress by a factor of 2, and our period is pi over 2. If B is 1/2, then our period is pi divided by 1/2 is 2 pi, and our graph stretches out by a factor of 2. Then H is our horizontal / phase shift, which determines where our starting point would be, which would be the middle point between your two asymptotes. And then K is your vertical shift, which would determine your midline. So the line that middle point starts in, well, the Y value that middle point will be on. So let's get started. I have tried my best with diagrams to teach you how to find these things. So I hope it helps. Our vertical asymptotes, their equation would be x equals h plus or minus pi over 2b. That might just seem like a random equation, but I'll try to explain what that means. And if you don't remember it, hopefully you can find them on your own and maybe even come up with this equation yourself. So if we think about our period is pi, right? Our horizontal shift is our starting point. By starting point, I mean the point that is directly between our two asymptotes. It is sitting on the midline, and that's the point you're going to graph. Then you're going to graph the halfway points. Then you're going to graph the asymptotes. So here are your asymptotes. They're pi apart. They're your period apart. Then from the horizontal shift, which is your middle point, to the asymptote, you have half a period, which is pi over 2, if we're saying our period is just pi. So that is where our pi over 2 comes in. And h plus or minus our pi over 2 would be, well, this is h, this is our middle point, plus pi over 2 will give us one asymptote, minus pi over 2 will give us another asymptote. But what if we throw in a b value of, let's just say 2? So that would mean our period would be pi over 2, and that means half of a period would be pi over 4. Well, that would just turn into pi over 4. So just remember, your period's your full from one asymptote to another asymptote. Your horizontal shift is your starting point that's directly in the middle, and from horizontal shift to a period, well, to an asymptote is half of your period. So if your period's pi over 2, then the middle point to an asymptote is pi over 4. So all you do is that horizontal shift plus pi over 4 minus pi over 4, and that'll give you your two asymptotes. And just remember that they will be from minus pi over 4 to pi over 4 is pi over 2. Just make sure you keep that same period. Now let's talk halfway points. Halfway points. Our equation is h plus or minus pi over 4b, comma, k plus or minus a. Let's start at this x value, h. Again, h is just our middle point between our two asymptotes. That is just your horizontal shift, your starting point that I always plot because it's just between the asymptotes, and it's on the midline, plus or minus pi over 4b. I'll try to show you right now why it is pi over 4. So our full from one asymptote to another asymptote is pi. Again, we're just keeping pi, period, not changing the period right now. So pi. Then from the middle, our horizontal shift, to the asymptote is 1/2 of our period. So that would be pi over 2. Then between those 2 points, it's called the halfway point, is between your horizontal shift and your asymptote. So if 1/2 your period is from the horizontal shift to the asymptote, 1/2 of your period is 1/4 of your period. So from the horizontal shift to a halfway point on both sides is 1/4 of your period. So that is where pi over 4 comes in. But pi over 4b, again, we can plug in 2. And this period's pi over 2. Then 1/2 your period's pi over 4. And then 1/4 of your period would be pi over 8. So that's all you do. And then h, again, your starting point. So h plus or minus pi over 4b is just 1/4 of your period. So h, your starting point, plus minus 1/4 of your period will give you your two halfway point x values. Then k plus or minus a. Well, what is k? K is our vertical shift and a is our amplitude. So k, we're already on k. If you graph this correctly, your horizontal shift, well, it'll be horizontal shift over and k up. You should have already graphed your midline because y equals k. So your horizontal shift, if k equals -1, well, your graph is just going to be down 1. So you're already going to be on your midline, and then you're going up and down a units. So you've already found your x values of your halfway points. Now you have k. You're already on y equals k, your midline. Now, all you do is you go up a on the right side and down a on the left side. And if a is negative, you do the opposite. You go down a on the right side and up a on the left side. I hope this was helpful in explaining how to find vertical asymptotes and halfway points in a tangent function. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it.